Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're exploring a seriously fascinating chapter that completely pulls back the curtain on the hidden structural magic behind theatrical success. We're breaking down the core concepts from Let's Design Stage Technicals 2. While most of us naturally think that theater is all about those actors shining out there in the spotlight, the real engine of any successful show operates completely out of sight. It's wild. So we're going to uncover exactly how that unseen world actually works.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with the invisible pillars, move right through the backstage ecosystem, explore a continuous cycle, uncover skills beyond the stage, and finally, we'll wrap up by looking at writing the blueprint. All right, Section 1, the invisible pillars.
The absolutely most vital parts of any successful production, the things that literally keep the entire show from collapsing into total chaos, are exactly the elements the audience never, ever sees. Think of a tree in full bloom, right? Its beauty is entirely sourced from a strong, completely hidden root system. Or think of an ancient temple that stood the test of time purely because of a deep underground foundation. And this brilliantly illustrates how a play's backstage crew operates. They are exactly like those roots and foundations. They're the unseen support system ensuring that anything interesting, meaningful, or successful on stage actually holds up. Moving on to Section 2, the backstage ecosystem. So let's transition from that metaphor of foundations and look directly at the specific teams working tirelessly behind the curtain to keep the whole show running smoothly. The sheer variety of work happening back there is incredible. Essentially, there are 4 major backstage departments to manage. First up, set and properties. These folks are physically changing sets between scenes in pitch darkness, ensuring actors have their hand props ready at the exact right millisecond. Then you've got costume and makeup. They're the ones helping with lightning-fast quick changes and fixing minor costume tears totally on the fly. Then there's the music department handling all the sound effects and sometimes even jumping in to cover up an onstage glitch with a perfectly timed audio cue. And finally, lighting, meticulously timing the lights and supporting actors when unexpected issues pop up. And remember, they're managing all of this chaos while the show is actively running.
Section 3, a continuous cycle.
Now, we really need to talk about when all this work actually happens, because I promise you, the job is not confined to just the 2 hours the audience is sitting in their seats. The workload is massive. Just consider the before-the-show tasks. The crew is super busy making sets, borrowing or purchasing properties, and procuring all the costumes. But the real surprise for a lot of people is the after-the-show work. When the audience leaves and the actors go home to sleep, the crew is honestly just getting started. They're dismantling and packing sets cautiously, returning rented properties, and washing and ironing costumes for the very next performance. It completely proves that the real work happens long, long before the curtain rises and continues way after it falls. Which brings us to an absolutely crucial concept. A problem with one could affect the whole show. The stakes backstage are incredibly high. Because there are just so many moving parts, absolute teamwork and constant communication between these distinct departments are totally non-negotiable. If the lighting team isn't talking to the set team, or if the props are somehow out of sync with costumes, the entire illusion completely breaks down. Next up, Section 4, skills beyond the stage. It turns out that navigating these intense, high-stakes theatrical demands perfectly translates into highly valuable everyday life skills. The essential skills required to run a backstage environment, things like teamwork, communication, human resource management, time management, and discipline are exactly what you need in daily life. Think about it for a second. Doing your school assignments on time, arriving to rehearsal without making everyone else wait, communicating effectively so everyone is on the same exact page. It perfectly mirrors the discipline your teachers and parents are always talking about, but you actually get to learn and practice it in a highly engaging theatrical setting. It's a real win-win. Now, what's really interesting about this is that this highly structured discipline isn't some modern invention or recent corporate theory. No way. It traces back over 2,500 years. Yeah, the oldest treatise on performing arts, the Natya Shastra, actually contains an extremely detailed, step-by-step set of instructions for backstage preparation. This ancient history of backstage is called Purvaranga Vidhi, and it just proves to us that setting up for a show, managing resources, and running a tight ship behind the scenes has pretty much always been treated as a highly revered and complex science. So let's put that science to the test with a real-world scenario. What if the main actor accidentally falls and breaks their leg on the very morning of a show? Just think about that for a second. Complete panic, right?
Well, the crew has to immediately figure out whether to cancel the whole thing, find a replacement, or even alter the script right on the spot, all while keeping budget and time constraints firmly in mind. It perfectly highlights the extreme, on-the-fly critical thinking, adaptability, and problem-solving that backstage crews absolutely must possess. And our final section, Section 5, Writing the Blueprint. So, we've talked extensively about the physical backstage and the crew, but now we really must transition to the ultimate unseen foundation of the entire production, the written script itself. As the old adage goes, without the script, a play is like a ship without compass. A script anchors the story to the vision. It literally is the core blueprint. All that technical backstage work we just explored, the dynamic lights, the carefully sourced costumes, the perfectly timed sounds, it ultimately exists for one single purpose: to serve the story written on the page.
To build that narrative blueprint properly, a writer first has to figure out the structure, the specific order in which story events are arranged. And there are 4 mandatory structural elements they have to master. First, the protagonist. Exactly who is the story about? Second, the goal. What does that protagonist actually want? Third, the conflict. What is the major obstacle standing right in their path? And finally, the resolution. How do they ultimately achieve or fail to achieve that goal? Let's move to and see how this builds when applied to a universally known story like the Ramayana. It instantly clarifies just how powerful this framework is. So, the protagonist is Rama. His goal is to take care of Ayodhya and follow the path of Dharma. The conflict arises when he gets banished to the forest for 14 years and Sita is kidnapped. And then the resolution comes when he finds Hanuman's help, brings Sita back, completes his 14 years, and returns to rule. It's a perfect, structurally sound blueprint. Now, to actually manage that structural blueprint on a physical stage, writers divide the script into what we call scenes. Think of them just like chapters in a book. A scene is simply a division marking a change in time, place, or action. Because a play can't just run continuously for hours without breaks, right? Scenes help organize the narrative flow, and crucially, they give the backstage crew those exact blackout moments they desperately need to quickly switch out sets or execute those crazy fast costume changes. Ultimately, whether you are outlining the deep structural elements of a script, managing the lighting cues, or rushing to hand an actor or prop in the pitch dark, you are part of the unseen pillars that truly drive a show's success. It's all about making the magic happen. So, as we wrap up this explainer on the structural magic of theater, I want to leave you with this provocative thought. Which backstage department fits you best, and what specific skill will you take from it to use in your own everyday life? Think about where your own strengths lie in that unseen foundation. Thanks so much for joining me to explore the hidden mechanics of the stage. Catch you next time.